Good evening. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we're starting a new chapter here. So it says in Kuf Ain, and Mesichin Beseuda, right? So, right, it says here that a person shouldn't be talking during the Seuda. Right, so what's the source for this and what's the reason? So it comes from Perek Kama Tanit, first Perek in Tanit, Hey Amud Bet. And right, we're going to see that the reason is because we don't want somebody to choke. So what happens is that when you're talking and eating at the same time, it could cause the food to go down the wrong pipe, the windpipe, and the person could choke like that. This is the reason why they tell you not to do that. But I think from my recollection, you see, right, that people today are not so particular about that. They do talk during the meals, and there's a reason for that. We're going to get into it in a second. So then it says, "V'itav Yerushalmi Kitzav Mevarchin." It says Yerushalmi also with this thing regarding not eating, not talking during the meals. Garsinam Perk Amar Lahem Emuneh Alacha Beseudam. So yeah, we have to see the tour. Yeah, let's look at the tour. Right. Well, so it says here, we'll read the whole tour. אין מסיחין בסעודה, ואיתה בירושלמי, אפילו במען דעתיש בגו מיכלה, אסור לממר לאסותא, right? So it says in Yerushalmi that even if somebody sneezes during the meal, you shouldn't say, right, bless you, right, whatever, gesundheit, whatever they say, right? In Israel, they say la briut, good health, whatever, all kinds of different things, different customs. But anyway, you shouldn't do that, he says. Mishum sakanta. So why is that? Because of danger. Kasina the perk amar lahem menem. So it says there in this perk in this Gemara, halcha beseuda adam yotze leatil maim notel yado echad. So it says, right, that if a person needs to go and urinate during the meal, he has to wash one hand. Only the hand that he used, to touch his body. Right? If he spoke with his friend, they fleeg him, and right, he like kind of like got drawn away from the meal, made an interruption. So there he says he should wash both his hands. Why is that? Because he got distracted from the meal. So he says when he washes in front of everybody, in the presence of everybody. What does that mean? Because they shouldn't suspect him. They shouldn't. They didn't wash his hands. Okay. So he says that's only regarding drinking. When it comes to eating, notel afilu bechutz. He washes even outside. Because people know, right, that he doesn't want to eat, without washing his hands. So, right, there's no suspicion like that. They know that he won't eat without washing his hands. Okay, so that's the whole tour. Let's go back to Beit Yosef and see how he explains that. So says the Beit Yosef, where is this coming from? Yoma Lamed Amud Bet Amud Aleph. It says over there. Rashi explains Kolmar Halacha Zo Amur Be'alachot Seuda. This halacha was said regarding the laws of Seuda. Adam Shiatza Mitoch HaSeuda. So what does that mean? A person who left the Seuda, Lashtin, right, to urinate. Notel Yado Echad. So there, right, we said he needs to wash one hand only. Bekatuv be'agaot asheri perek bet brachot. It says over there in this rabbi, hecha sheyashav beseuda v'yatza v'yitil mayim. If he sat in the seuda and he came out and he urinated, velo shifshef, and he didn't touch himself, nitzotzot biyodea shelo naga b'makom hatinofet. So he didn't touch himself to wipe himself or something like that, or to touch the place of the filth of the excrement. So there he can just go back to the seuda. He doesn't have to wash his hands. But if he defecated, so there he definitely needs to wash, he says. So who was this? This was Rashi. Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. ואל לא שנו אלא לשתות Piresh Rashi, so regarding what they said, right, that's only regarding drinking. Shenot tzarich od lechol, that means he doesn't need any more to eat. Rashi says, Ela lishtot, he just needs to drink more. Hu nichnas, right, so he comes in, שהיו רגילים להאריך לשחוט בשתייה. So he says, why? Because he says they were, their custom was to prolong the drinking process. Right? Achar mazon, after they ate the meal. They sat down to drink, So, הוא צריך ליטול שמא ייתן פרוסה לתוך פיו. But he says, nevertheless, he has to wash. Why is that? Because he may, decide to, take a piece of bread, and chug it down. So therefore, right, he should wash anyway. וגם רבנו יונה כתב בסוף פרק אלו דברים. רבנו יונה also says, right, in מ"ב עמוד ב', דתמה דצריך ליטול מפני שדרכם היה בשעת שתייה. So he says the reason why you have to drink, you have to wash in this case, is because he says in those days their custom was, at the time of the drinking, lechol me'at, they would eat a little bit. In other words, they basically were sitting down to drink, but they also, had a little bit food there to accompany the drinks. Because otherwise it says he really wouldn't have to drink, he wouldn't have to wash his hands at all. Just because of drinking, right? In other words, he's trying to tell you, right, that drinking doesn't really require to wash hands, because you're not touching the liquid. You're drinking with a cup, so that doesn't really require to wash. So the reason why they were washing is because they were also nibbling, on some food, piece of bread, whatever it is. Okay, that's the end of it. So let's see Shulchan Aruch. So yeah, so we got to bring this up because it's a new chapter. So let's see what we can do here. Bring it up. So it says here, Shulchan Aruch, en mesichin b'seuda, right? As we said, don't talk during the seuda. Shime yakdim kanev leveshet, right? So he says, what's the reason why? Because you may come to, right, open your windpipe, and put it down there, the food. And even if somebody sneezed, בסעודה, and the סעודה, אסור לומר לו אסותא. You shouldn't tell him, right, any, right, Gesundheit, whatever it is, right? So, what do you call it? As we said, right, in those days they say asuta. So asuta means like healing. Every country has a different custom, what they say. When a person sneezes, right? Bless you, whatever it's God, whatever it is, right? God knows. So that's the story. Yeah? So So the question is like this, right? What about us? Are we allowed to talk during the meal? We see that everybody does, right? Nobody cares about this, Nobody seems to be, stringent about this. So the question is why? So let's take a look in the Mishnah, see what it says. Right, look, yeah, right away, he gets to the point over here. The point is that he says, right, this is only when you're actually, eating the food, But if you're taking a break, in between, right, and you're right, then you can talk. So in other words, he's telling you here, between one course and another, you can talk. Why? Because you're not eating there. So only when you're actually, chewing the food and eating, like that's when you shouldn't be talking. As you chew your food, right? Don't talk at the same time. It's not proper manners, by the way. Also, as you know, right? It's not proper manners to do that. And also, there's danger involved, as we said. So therefore, it's a choke hazard. Basically that's what we're saying, right? So therefore, you got to be careful about that. So then, right, what do we do? The way we do it today is that in between chewing the food, right, whatever, we talk, and then we continue to eat, like we go like this, right, intermittent style. That's what we do, and this way there's no danger, because at the time that we're talking, we're not chewing. So this is the reason why people are not so particular about these things today. Okay, good. So that's good. So Mishnah Berurah here brings some other things, but it's not really talking about our discussion here. So I'm not going to get into it, even though it's interesting stuff. I'm going to try to stick to the script, stick to the topic, right, and not to deviate now to other things. Okay, so anyway, let's move on. So then we're getting to the next scenario, right? Which is that, hayu masubin beseuda v'yatsa echad me'latin mayim. So what happened, right? They were sitting and eating a seuda, and one went out to urinate, right? So, went to use the bathroom, right? But in those days, right, when you're talking about urinating, he wasn't going to the bathroom. He was just like going outside, and urinating on the floor, right, in the dirt, whatever, in the grass, whatever, right? That's what it was. So he says regarding that. So therefore he says, right, what you got to do is in a case like that, you need to wash one of your hands only. So why is that? Because you didn't use both your hands, right, to urinate. You used only one. Right? Some people like to use two, whatever, right? But the assumption is that he's using one hand. Right? He's a handy guy, right? He can do it with one hand. He doesn't need two hands for that. So therefore, right, he only washes that hand. That's what he's saying. The other hand wasn't involved with this, so it doesn't need to be washed. But if you're going to tell me, well, yeah, but when you go to the bathroom, we wash both hands, right? Yeah, that's true, but that's because you went into the bathroom. But here, as we said, right, he didn't really go into the bathroom. He just, went outside to urinate, basically, right? The good old days. Okay. Let's move on. Right? So he's also another thing. He says he should wash his hand in the presence of the people there. Why is that? Because they shouldn't suspect him that he didn't wash his hands. And so, in order to avoid suspicion, let him do it like like in everybody's face. Wash his hands there. Okay. So says the Rama here, Ve'im lo shivshev eno, right? Notel klal. So says the Rama, but if he didn't touch himself when he urinated, he just did like, like the automatic way, right? Whatever. So if that's the case, he doesn't have to wash any hands, right? He's totally absolved. Unless he touched right his body, right? That's a different story. But he says if he defecated, then he for sure needs to wash, right? So in other words, it's not the same thing, right? Urination is not the same. So right, do you see? That's the way we paskin. Interesting. But nowadays, since we're using the bathroom, so we're washing both hands, right? That's what it is, Okay, so let's move on. Okay, then he says, that's only when you're drinking, right? It says. But he says, if you're eating though, right, more, after you come back from urinating, so there, right, you gotta wash his hands even outside, even though they're not watching him there. Right? Because they know, right, that he's not gonna come in, without washing his hands if he's coming to eat. In those days, it was like a given, like you of course you're gonna wash your hands. What's the question? Okay. ולא אכל בלא רתילה. ואם דבר, אם דיבר עם חבר פליג, right? What about, now we have a different scenario, right? Which is that he went out, to speak with his friends. And he kind of like got disassociated from the meal. He got distracted. So there, notel shte yadav kivan sheisiach dato. So it says there he's got to wash both his hands now. He's coming back, right? And why is that? Because he just got distracted, so he lost his trend of thought, his concentration, and therefore he needs to now reestablish that mode, right, that he was in before by washing his hands. That's what he's saying. So says the Rama here, how did so is that which we require, right? To wash your hands for drinking. That's only in the seuda. Because we're concerned he's going to eat also something. That's the reason why we tell him to do that. But since it wasn't for that, so you don't really need to wash your hands to drink, right? You're good as it is. Because for sure you're not going to be eating. So there's no question about it. So that's why, if a person gets up at night, from sleeping, and he needs to drink like some water, thirsty, he doesn't really have to go wash his hands first. He could just drink, So why is that? Because he's he's he doesn't need to wash his hands to drink. He's not touching the water. It's inside the cup. So therefore there's no need. Okay, good. Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says about that. Right, so he says that also Shulchan Aruch paskins like that in chapter 158, right, paragraph 6. So over there, Shulchan Aruch also says that you don't need to wash your hands for drinking. Okay, very good. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. Open the window. Give me a second. Okay, so now it says the Torah. שניים ממתינים זה לזה, בקערה שלושה אין ממתינים. Oh, so this is an interesting halacha, right? In those days, right, it was like the eating that they did, the seudah, it was very communal style. So what does that mean? They would like bring like a big tray, of food, and everybody would just like take from there. So it was like they were eating from one tray. Um, so there's like a certain derech eretz here, right? Different, right? A certain proper etiquette over here. So what are we talking about? Let's say you have two people eating, right, at the meal. So, and they have one big tray, right, for both of them. So what happens is, right, the proper etiquette says that you shouldn't start eating without without the other guy being there. It's not proper manners. So therefore, if the guy's still not there, I'd like don't start without him. So you got to wait for him, and then start together. That's when you have two people. But he says when you have three people, then we don't have to wait for one person, right? So you see why that is? Because when two of them are there and only one of them is not, so then why should they have to wait for the minority, for one guy? So therefore they can start without him. But when you have two people, the proper manners is to wait. That's what he's saying, the Torah. So says the Beit Yosef, he brings a source for this, right? Where is this? And Braita Perek Gimel Shachlu, over there in Brachot, right? Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. When you read the Achikamar, it says this seems to be like saying like this. So he says when one person, right, kind of like stops eating from the tray, because he wants to drink, for a second. He wants to drink, take a drink. Im hem shnaim. So if there's two people there, right, eating together, right, so you should wait for him until he finishes the drinking. כלומר, מפסיק מלאכול עד שיגמור השתייה. So what does that mean? He stops eating until that guy finishes drinking. אבל אם הם גימל, but if it's like three people, as we said, right? אינם פוסקים, they don't have to stop. They don't have to wait for the third guy. בשביל השותה שאינו בדין שיפסקו שניים בשביל אחד. So as we said, right, it's a matter of like majority here, right? Two people who shouldn't have to wait for one. That's what it is. So it says it's like that which we said. אחד מפסיק לשניים, ואין שניים מפסיקים לאחד. So it's very similar to what we said in a different place, right? So I'll explain to you what the connection is here between this and that. There's another halacha which is similar to this, which is that, let's say, right, we're going towards the end of the meal. And so one guy, wants to like stop eating and leave. He's got to go. So the question is now, right? But he also wants to say zimun, because there's three people there. So is he allowed to tell them, you know what? Let's like stop eating for I need to go. So let's do zimun, and then after zimun you can continue eating by yourself. So the rule is that if there's two people there, they don't have to stop and wait for him. Wait for him to they should do zimun because 2 against 1. But if it's the other way around, what does that mean? That there's 2 people that want to leave and one guy wants to stay. So then they can tell him, you know what, let's just like stop for a second. We'll do the zimun and then right, we'll leave and you can continue eating. So there it's allowed. Why? Because 2 of them are leaving, so they're the majority. So therefore, right, they have the advantage. They have the upper hand over here. That's what he's saying. But when it comes to one person against 2, so he's in the minority, so he can't he's not the one who's running the show over here. You know what I mean? So he can't make them do whatever according to his whims. It's not right to do that. There are also other things, by the way, like that in halakha. For instance, also when it comes to like prayers, that we say that you shouldn't do something, to wait for an individual if the community is going to have to wait for him, because he's like just one person. He's a minority, and what, everybody has to wait for you, until you get your thing and, whatever, you do your thing. No, right? We can't do that. We can't wait for you, right? You're just one. And we're the majority. So therefore, right, the rule is we're not going to wait for you, so therefore a person has to understand that, right? When he's involved in a community, the majority rules, so we go according to the needs of the majority of the people, and we don't consider really, the whims of the minority. I gotta go now. Okay, you gotta go, so go. What we're supposed to, we're supposed to go according to your whims. I mean, just one person. We're 10 people over here, and you're one. That's what we're saying. So yeah, it's an important concept, in halakha, really, this thing. And when it comes to prayers, they call that tirchat tzibura. What does that mean? You're causing, the community you're causing them to wait, and so you're causing them a problem here. So therefore, we tell you, listen, you're just one, and you're going against the community. The community is waiting for you, so you got to speed it up. We're not going to wait for you. That's the idea. Okay, so let's see the Shulchan Aruch here. Bet. So says Shulchan Aruch, Shnayim mamtinim zeh et zeh v'kara. As we said, right? If there are two people eating together, so then the proper manners, is that one should wait for the other. So why is that? Because they're taking from one single tray from both of them, and what happens is that if one starts eating before the other, so it's like he's getting a head start on him, and that means this guy may not get what he wants. So you're kind of like you're kind of like you're causing him anguish over here by having to by starting without him. This is disrespectful. So therefore we say wait for him, right? And then dig in together into the tray, right? Even nowadays, like what we do is sometimes they bring like a big tray, and everybody takes like a little portion from there and puts it on his little private plate. So I mean, I would assume that the same thing applies there as well. That you have to wait, in case like that. That would be the proper thing to do. But when it comes to so he says, what does that mean? If one is now stopping, right, to drink, so you got to wait for him, as we said. But if there are three people, so there, two of them don't have to wait for one person. As we said, right, the majority rules. That's the way it is, so same thing over here. Okay, good. So let's see what else we got here. Maybe we can try one more. Let's see. It's not too big. Yeah, so it says like this. Shnai mamtinin, no, I'm sorry. Misharin pe'ah be'ki'ara, ve'en misharin pe'ah be'ilfas. So this interesting thing, right? What he says here is that when you bring a tray of food, right, to the table, for the whole table there, right, everybody. So the proper manners is that you should leave like some food left over a little bit, on the tray. Like don't take the last drop, the last crumbs on the tray. Leave something over a little bit. So when it comes to the tray, that's proper manners, leave a little bit over. By the way, people who are, have good manners, they know this even without learning the halakha. They're well-mannered people, good manners. Right? They're not going to take the last drop. Yeah, right, whatever. Yeah, they know not to do that. So that's regarding the tray, right? And now it's talking about the ilfas, right? So ilfas, we already said before. Ilfas is like a pot, some kind of a pot. So he's telling you, right, that you don't have to leave over food in the pot, only in the tray. That pertains to the tray only, not to the pot. So in the pot, there's no rule like that. There's no etiquette like that. So let's see Bet Yosef, what he says about that. Beresh Perek Ketzat Me'arin. It's also right. Eruvin. Oh, okay. Eruvin. Nun Gimel Amud Bet. Uperesh Rashi. Rashi explains Kishashamash Me'are Min Ha'ilfas L'toch HaKe'arai. So he says when the waiter, right, scrapes out the food from the pot, to put it inside the tray. So he says we don't really have to leave anything in the pot, some like little remainder there, whatever, right? The tzarcho for his needs. אבל כל אחד מניח פיה בקערה ומחזירה לשמש והוא מאכל השמש. So he says, right? What's the reason he says why we leave over right? You know, some remnant of food in the tray. What's the purpose of that? So he says the purpose is that the waiter should have something to eat, right? We're leaving it for him. That's what he's saying. Okay. So let's see Shulchan Aruch on that. It says Shulchan Aruch, Meshairin pe'ah be'kiara, right? As we said, we leave over, right, some food in the tray. Kol echad me'ocholin, right? Every person who's eating there should leave something over, right? Each one has to donate his little right donation for the waiter. Today we don't do this, That's not the way we operate today. I mean, things are a little bit different. But anyway, right? You see the point. What the point is here. So that belongs to the waiter. He says. Nowadays, by the way, right? You know how things are. You have like a group of people, right? The restaurant eating, from a tray, right? The waiter will not want to eat from there because he's afraid of germs and viruses and God knows what else. So he won't want to touch it. I mean, so things have changed a little bit today, right? We live in a different world. Right? Germ warfare, right? We don't want that stuff. So even not only he doesn't want your food, but he'll come and serve you with a mask, so he doesn't breathe your air either. So things have changed a little bit in this world today. So it's not really the way of the waiter today, to take from the tray. So you probably don't have to be careful about this today. There's no reason to be concerned about this. Unless, right, you have the old-fashioned, system where, the waiter is still eating from the tray, right? In most cases today, it doesn't apply like that. Everybody's worried about germs and viruses, whatever. Right? It's like everybody has become paranoid. It's like nobody wants to touch you. They don't want to shake your hand. They don't want to breathe your air. Nothing. They don't. So things have changed. Okay. I remember, during the COVID times, I was like a black sheep, I didn't want to wear a mask, I was always against it. And everybody used to come down on me because of that. And now there's everybody's saying, well, yeah, it was a mistake, yeah, we put on masks, it was a mistake. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I was right. I can't tell you. I don't know what to say. All I know is I couldn't breathe, with those masks. I couldn't breathe, there was I was choking, from lack of oxygen, strangulation. That's all I know. Okay. So yeah, so what do we see from there, right? As we said, that we do leave over in the tray and we don't leave her over in the pot for the waiter, right? Today we're not really concerned about these things, so I would venture to guess, right, that we're not concerned. This halakha is not relevant in our times. Okay. Yeah, maybe we can try one more. It's very short. All right, let's go for it. So it says here, right? "Katav Rambam en mistaklin b'fnei ha'ochel." Oh, this is an important one, by the way. This is an important halakha. Anybody who wants to learn proper manners, right, has to know this. Okay. So what does the Rambam say, right? It's not proper manners. Two things, right? One is to look at a person when he eats, to stare at him. And it's not proper manners also to look at his food when he's eating. That's what the Rambam is telling you here. So let's see the tour inside. This. Yeah, so says the Rambam, right? What's the reason why we don't do this? We don't look at a person when he's eating, or we don't look at his food. So he says it's in order not to embarrass him. It's embarrassing to when somebody's staring at you like that when you're eating. Um, okay, let's try something else. Maybe we'll do that next time. So let me just finish off this halacha, right? At Yosef Shulchan Aruch, 2 seconds. 2 seconds. So he brings the source for this, right? Where is this Rambam? Perek Zayin Milchot Brachot, laws of blessings, right in the Rambam. Okay, very good. And I think it's from the Talmud also. There's one more piece over here. So maybe we'll just see Shulchan Aruch and we'll do that next time. Let's see. Right, so it says here, "En mistaklim b'fnei ha'ochel belo b'manato shelo b'fnei Hashem." As you said, right? That a person should not be staring at two things, right? One is the person who's eating, and the other thing is, his food, right? His plate, right? Don't look at that stuff. It's not proper manners. So, right, as the Rambam says, you're embarrassing him when you do that. So it's embarrassing. Okay. Okay, very good. So thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Let it tov. Chazak Baruch. Bezrat Hashem. We'll see you tomorrow, and hopefully everybody will get back to good health and good spirits and good place. So we can continue our work over here. Okay, Bezrat Hashem. Let it tov.